Oh, how the mighty are mocked. When 7 of the world's most powerful leaders gather in one place, all sorts of groups try to get some of that global attention. This puppet show by Oxfam is meant to draw attention to women's issues. As the G7 leaders get settled in at a resort in La Malbaie, Quebec, let's take a quick look at how membership to this elite club has changed over the years. The first meeting of big players was in 1975, created to deal with an oil crisis and turmoil in the world economy. Only 6 members then: the US, UK, France, Italy, Germany, and Japan. A year later, the US President Gerald Ford invited Canada to join. It became the G7. In 1998, it became the G8 when Russia joined, but Russia was suspended in 2014 after it annexed Crimea. So this year, as we've been saying, some are wondering if this really is the G6+1. The shadow looming over the summit is that the most powerful leader is also the most unpredictable.
They are referred to as the family photos, a symbol of the close relationship among the leaders and their countries. But many are wondering what this year's portrait will look like when old friends are nursing new grievances, like Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum. Susan Lejeune Dalgierzak is the UK's top diplomat to Canada.
The United States and the United Kingdom, like Canada and the United States, are really close partners. And you don't expect your close partners to do something as unacceptable as this. And free trade is very, very important to us and will become more important to us as we leave the European Union.
So where does that leave this year's G7? Ian Bremmer is an author, foreign policy analyst, and professor at New York University.
This is going to be the most dysfunctional G7 summit since it was founded in 1975, and it's not even close. I mean, this is going to be a profound, can I say, shit show of an international meeting.
They're our allies, but they take advantage of us.
Trump's disruption of the traditional world order goes beyond tariffs. The U.S. has pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership, the Iran deal, as well as ditching the Paris Climate Accord, leaving behind their G7 peers.
We have lived for decades now in a Pax Americana. Not everyone loves it, but nonetheless, it has been a U.S.-led Western architecture. The Bretton Woods institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, the WTO, the G7, the G20, the United Nations. That's the way the world order has run, and that order is in enormous threat right now. There is a level of creative destruction of our geopolitical order that no one is filling. The Chinese are building some alternative architecture, but America First is running away from it, and that is going to be in very clear evidence in Canada this week.
To get a Canadian view, we turn to some people who have been inside those G7 meeting rooms. First, John Baird, who is Stephen Harper's foreign affairs minister.
There's some suggestion that achieving any kind of meaningful consensus out of this meeting is very unlikely, and primarily because of Trump. What's your view on that?
Well, I think, if all 7 or 8 countries that got together agreed on everything, you wouldn't need to have a meeting. Whenever the United States is around the table, obviously everyone's a second-tier player. Just the size of their economy, the size of their population, the fact that they're the only global superpower, that's a huge dynamic. But Canada plays a big role. We are in the G7. We certainly are number 7. Mm-hmm. We have the 12th largest global economy. But the United Kingdom just fell to number 6 in terms of the global economy. India's economy passed it. And now with the rise of China, Canada's economy was bigger than China 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. So the world is becoming demonstrably more complex and more difficult to steer in the right way.
Still, drawing on his personal experience, Baird says, don't underestimate the value of one-on-one meetings.
Well, it is probably the world's most exclusive mini convention. There's a lot of opportunities for networking and meetings on the side that perhaps don't get much attention, but are perhaps as important to the formal agenda.
I think that we're going into this G7 meeting in a very different set of parameters than what has happened historically since the end of the Second World War.
Former Prime Minister Paul Martin was in British Columbia last week speaking to G7 finance ministers.
We are going to have to basically reassert the optimism that globalization is a good thing and globalization can be made to work.
Like Baird, Martin is optimistic there will be some meaningful agreement at the G7 reached behind closed doors.
The most important part of any G7 meeting is the dinner. And I have found that those dinners are where more is accomplished and effectively you're able to talk to the other person, look him or her in the eye, and say, look, you know, you're not where we are and you're not going to succeed. And basically the answers come back and forth. And I have great hopes fundamentally for that private dinner.
But for all of their experience at these summits, keep in mind neither Martin nor Baird have ever dealt with a U.S. president like Donald Trump, a president who has turned unpredictability into a political doctrine.